Welcome, everybody, to another Metropolitan Report Live special Monday afternoon, 2 p.m. show. It is your friend and resident Mets host, Alfred Parsar Jr. here in Metropolitan Report Live. As you can see the title of this, as we simulcast on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook, we're going to talk about the past week in Mets baseball. It's been an up and down week. Appreciate everybody who is tuning in thus far. And before we begin today's show, just a reminder, if you like this podcast, you like what you see, share the podcast. If you know people that like Mets baseball, you know people that like baseball in general, you know people who like sports talk, send them this podcast and share the love. Also, if you have an opinion, sound off in the comments, whether you're on Facebook, whether you are on YouTube, whether you're on Twitch. All comments make the air. So you want to engage live, everything is here for you. So this New York Mets team had an interesting week, up and down week, as some really bad happened and some really good happened. And you know what? I'm not even going to focus on the negative first. Let's focus on the positive. First thing, a week ago today, on Monday, Pete Alonso became the Mets home run king. Of course, the record that was held for 37 years by Darryl Strawberry, 252 home runs, was broken by Pete Alonso. And not only was it broken, but Pete Alonso did it with emphasis. He hit 253, and then later in the same game against the Atlanta Braves, hit number 254. I've said it again, Pete Alonso is a tremendous talent. I have lobbied for him to get a contract extension by this Mets club all year long. Going back to last season's wild card round against the Milwaukee Brewers, where he single-handedly saved the Mets season with one swing of a bat. And again, I understand David Stearns doesn't believe in long-term commitment. Pete Alonso wouldn't even be back on the team if it wasn't for Steve Cohen. That was a deal brokered by Cohen to Alonso and Scott Boras directly. But Pete has been a main cog in the wheel so far this season. Pete Alonso having a tremendous year this year, where, quite frankly, if the Mets didn't bring back Pete on this team, it's very, very questionable where this team would be right now. You look at Pete Alonso's numbers so far this season. He's batting .268. He's got 28 home runs and 100 RBI. Now, I predicted at the beginning of the season that Alonso minimum was going to get 30 and 100, with a little over, with about 39 games left in the season. I don't foresee 30 home runs being an issue. I can't picture Pete Alonso not getting at least minimum 2 more home runs this year. Pete Alonso, again, 268, 28 home runs, 100 RBI. And it begs the question now, because he is now the Mets home run king. So now there was always an emotional attachment to Pete Alonso between the Mets fan base and Pete. But the thing about this particular situation, it was clear that a lot of Met fans were prepared to be heartbroken in the offseason when it looked like Pete Alonso was not gonna be here again. A lot of Met fans were voicing their frustrations. A lot of Met fans, including myself, were scared. And then you have a different portion of the fan base that said, "Oh, well, if we don't stick with Pete, Mark Vientos can go play first base, or we'll chase Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who's going to be a free agent in the offseason." Well, Vientos no longer an option at first base because he's played first a couple of games this year. He played first one game this year, and he proved defensively that he was inept. And his bat has cooled off significantly than the bat he had last season. And in the middle of this season, the Blue Jays locked up Vladimir Guerrero Jr. So, Pete Alonso, if he opts out, which he should, based on the tremendous season he's having, because he was given a 2-year deal with a player opt out after the first year. It would be a huge mistake to let Pete Alonso go. For a variety of reasons. Number one, again, he is your all-time home run leader. That's a very sentimental thing, you know, being the all-time home runs leader on a ball club, which by the way, and we're going to get into this in a second, 250 home runs with the same team. Not many guys have done that. That's rare, especially in an era where you have guys who bounce around from team to team to team. So to do it all with one team. 254 home runs with one club in 7 years is not bad. Not bad at all. So, Pete Alonso, he wants to stay a Met, I firmly believe. The Mets firmly want him. The fan base, I should say, wants him. Now, Pete does understand it's a business, because when he's asked about his upcoming, what he's going to do, whether he's going to opt out or stay in, he said it is a business. It is a business. So Pete Alonso knows the reality that he may not be brought back. But let's see here. Let's take a look at the list. Guys who have hit at least minimum 250 home runs with one team. Hank Aaron, Willie Mays. Hank Aaron did it with the Braves, obviously. Willie Mays with the New York Giants / San Francisco Giants. Harmon Killebrew did it with the Twins. Mike Schmidt did it with the Phillies. Jeff Bagwell with the Houston Astros. Todd Helton with the Colorado Rockies. And Cal Ripken Jr. with the Baltimore Orioles. Ken Griffey Jr., 417 with the Seattle Mariners. George Brett hit 317 with the Kansas City Royals. So, and Jose Ramirez, the only other active player in MLB today with at least 250 home runs with the same team. So there you have it. Only one other active player in the league has done it. And these guys, and this is a heck of a list here. You're joining Hank Aaron, Willie Mays, Harmon Killebrew, Mike Schmidt, Ken Griffey Jr., Jeff Bagwell, Todd Helton, Cal Ripken, and George Brett. Hall of Fame players. Granted, baseball in bygone eras was different, because you had guys like Hank Aaron who played 22 seasons. And it's crazy because Hank Aaron finished his career with the Milwaukee Brewers, but you know, it's a tremendous feat to do such a thing with one team. And then, of course, Babe Ruth also on that list with the amount of homers he hit in the Yankee pinstripes, another Hall of Fame player. So Pete Alonso, I mean, granted, when it's all said and done, he may not go to Cooperstown, Pete Alonso, because I don't believe his playing career is going to be long enough. But as we get a comment here, my good friend of the show, Bryson Carver, says, as a Red Sox fan, thanks for taking 2 of 3 off Seattle. Good bounce back series for you. Hey, no problem. It was our pleasure. And we're going to talk about that Seattle series coming up. Everybody, Bryson Carver, by the way. Bryson Carver, Carving It Up Live, the podcast, one of my all-time favorite sports talk shows in the land. He is a member of the Grid Network, a good friend of mine. Talks baseball, basketball, football, NFL seasons coming up, preseasons and mix. I'm sure he has a lot of great things to say. His show airs live Mondays and Wednesdays at 6 p.m. here on YouTube. We give our friends plugs on this show. Bryson Carver again, folks. Carving It Up Live, 6 p.m. on YouTube. You go check him out. But back to Pete. I feel like they're gonna lose the fan base. The Mets are gonna lose the fan base if they don't do everything in their power to bring him back. Now, if he leaves on his own accord and says, you know what, I don't want to be a Met anymore, I want to go here, insert team here, then okay. There's nothing in it. Pete probably becomes public enemy number one. But if the Mets make offers and try to lowball him or don't want to give him the years, and you know what? I don't even think it's an AAV problem because the Mets made him the highest paid first baseman in the league this year on average annual value. So we get that. I just think I don't think it's a matter of money. I think it's a matter of years because again, David Stearns is the type of GM he does not like to invest in anything long term, pitching, hitting, and like I said, people will say, "Well, Juan Soto's 15 years with Steve Cohen." It was not. It was Steve Cohen, his wife Alex Cohen, and his father-in-law. Had nothing to do with David Stearns. Nothing. But I firmly predict that Pete Alonso should get paid this offseason. There's no question he's going to opt out, folks. No question. No question at all that he's going to opt out. It's just a matter of, are the Mets willing to make the commitment, give him one contract, just one contract, that'll carry him to retirement? Pete Alonso is 30 years old. He'll be 31 by the time the winter meetings comes around because his birthday is December 7th. At that point, 31 years old, give him a 6-year deal, 7-year deal, carry him to 37, 38, give him the contract he can retire on, and he'll be a Met for the rest of his career. He will retire a Met. His number 20 will hang up next to Keith Hernandez, Darryl Strawberry, Doc Gooden, David Wright, Gil Hodges, Casey Stengel, Willie Mays, Jackie Robinson, Tom Seaver, Mike Piazza, and Jerry Koosman. It's the right thing to do. Because if you let Pete walk, and Pete, I would say rest of the season, he's a 34 and 110 guy. How many guys in the league do you see 34 home runs, 110 RBIs, and mind you, he gets 100 and he gets 100 RBIs or close to it pretty regularly for his career. You take a look at Pete Alonso's career numbers. 2019, his rookie year, where he broke the rookie home run record. He beat Aaron Judge, by the way. 120 RBIs. We're not talking about 2020. That's the COVID season. It was only 60 games. 2021, bit of he had 94 RBIs, so close to 100. 2022, 131. 2023, 118. The off year last year, where he was still an all-star, by the way, 88. And he's sitting on an even 100. Good for second place in all of Major League Baseball as of this point right now. You just have you have to pay him because again, like, where are you going to get that type of production? Would you rather spend far less money and get it out of 2 or 3 players? That's asinine. You already see that a lot of these fringe guys in MLB, sometimes to get them 100 RBIs combined, you need 3 or 4 of them. Where are you going to get that from? The combination of Beatty, Vientos, Alvarez, and Mauricio? I don't think so. So, all right, Romy is the best. Says you had to mention he beat Judge. I mean, he did beat Judge. Aaron Judge had the all-time rookie home run record. He set that in 2017, and 2 years later, Pete Alonso came and broke it. It's a fact. And Aaron Judge, say what you want, he's a Yankee. I personally, I don't hate the guy, but he's a star player of the team across town with the most annoying, obnoxious fan base I've ever seen. It's a fact. Pete broke it. Or spend so much money on Soto and get nothing. Well, Soto, and we've talked about Soto on this show. You got to look at the numbers. You got to look beyond the batting average for Juan Soto. It's the OPS and the on base percentage that tells the story for Soto. But moving on though, the Mets, as of today is Monday, August 18th, 2025. And this Mets club, no game today. Just finished a 3-game series with Seattle, which we did beat the Mariners in the series, lost Friday, won Saturday, won yesterday in the Little League Classic in Williamsport, which was a very fun game. So, before we get to that, Barry Grant Jr., my close personal friend, Soto is 2020 this season for the first time in his career. He's trying to be productive in other ways. And yes, Soto got to 2020 last night. I mean, he's already over the 20 home runs. He's at 30, but he has 20 stolen bases this year. So Juan Soto, the guy's in a 2020 club. It's a possibility he could get to 30 before the year is up. He's not a prolific base stealer, but he has a career high in stolen bases this year. Juan Soto, again, a key integral part of this team. And again, you just have to look beyond the batting average. You have to look beyond the homers and the RBIs. Again, Juan Soto is a guy where if you look at his OPS and his on-base percentage, his walks are through the wazoo. But, and by the way, All Even podcast with Barry Grant Jr., a tremendous show. Make sure you check that out, I believe, Thursday evenings on YouTube. But you look at this Mets team coming into today, again, no game today. Won the series against Seattle. Lost Friday, won yesterday, which we're going to talk about. Won Saturday, sorry, which we're going to talk about. And then they won the Little League Classic yesterday to close them out. So the Mets sit at 66-58, 8 games over 500, which is insane considering where the Mets were in the beginning of June, 21 games over 500. Now just a mere 8. But they're 5 games behind the Philadelphia Phillies, who just got some startling news on their end. Their ace, Zach Wheeler, with a blood clot in his pitching shoulder. So the ace of the rotation is gone. No timetable for his return. He most likely is going to miss the rest of the regular season. No clue if he'll be back for the playoffs. But the Phillies sit with a 5-game lead in the NL East. But in the wild card, the Mets currently occupy the 3rd and final wild card spot. If the season were to end today, they'd be in the playoffs. Trailing them very closely, the Cincinnati Reds. The Reds 1.5 games out of that final wild card spot. They entered this weekend only down a half a game. They lost on Friday when the Mets lost. They lost on Saturday when the Mets won, and both teams won yesterday. So the Mets trying to gain ground from those Cincinnati Reds. The Reds have the toughest strength of schedule going forward. Also, the Reds are in action tonight. They do play tonight. 9:30, that game is on the West Coast. The Reds will visit the Los Angeles Angels out in LA. So the Reds could theoretically gain ground today if they win, since the Mets are off today. But the Mets can't just scoreboard watch. The Mets got to do their part and win games. Again, They start a series against the Washington Nationals tomorrow. Now, let's talk about something for a second. Paul Blackburn. I've been a huge critic of Paul Blackburn since spring training. We have the videos on this channel. And you can go back to February, go back to March, April. Paul Blackburn, often injured, hardly ever available, and when available, not very good. Paul Blackburn was designated for assignment on Friday. Paul Blackburn, he was the ace of the staff out with the Athletics. Hold on, we got comments here. Shaheem Taylor, it's crazy work, but he should have been an all-star. I'm assuming he's talking about Juan Soto. Yes, he should have been an all-star because they were, like I said, previous video on this channel, there were guys that were picked to be all-stars over Soto. I'm not going to repeat it because it's like beating a dead horse, but guys who were picked over Soto, and Soto had better numbers than them at the time and now. But going back to Paul Blackburn often injured, hardly available, and when available, not good. Paul Blackburn was the ace of the Oakland Athletics pitching staff when he was there. He was their best pitcher, their top guy. He was the number one in their rotation for quite a few seasons. And now this morning, he was granted his unconditional release after being designated for assignment on Friday. Blackburn cleared waivers after the Mets removed him from the 40-man roster Saturday morning. He did not want to accept an assignment to the minor leagues outright. So he can now test the open market. Who knows if he'll catch on with another team this year. Paul Blackburn, plenty of major league experience, 93 appearances, 86 starts over 9 seasons. But he struggled in his time with the Mets, lifetime with the Mets between last season and this season, a 6.85 ERA. He had an 18-8 strikeout to walk ratio in 23 2/3 innings. Not good. His poor production probably won't land him on a major league roster for the rest of the way, considering that all the contending teams pretty much have their rosters locked up. Season only got a month and some change left, and he doesn't want to go to the minors. So the next time we'll see Paul Blackburn in major league action, maybe spring training, trying to make a club. So no better than a AAA pitcher at the moment. You look at Paul Blackburn. This season for the Mets, he pitched in 7 games, went 0-3, 6.85 ERA, 23 2/3 innings, 18 strikeouts. Paul Blackburn, I won't miss you, but thank you for the positive contributions you made to this Mets organization. The last time we saw Paul Blackburn, which is interesting, his last game was last week, Wednesday, where he pitched 5 innings, gave up 2 runs on a hit, walked 1, struck out 3. 5 innings of relief in an attempt to save the bullpen. But the reason why Paul Blackburn was designated for assignment is because the Mets needed to make room for young Nolan Mclean. Nolan Mclean, the rookie, made his major league debut on Saturday. I was live in attendance to see it. And Nolan Mclean, there were rumors that somebody was going to get called up Saturday. Frankie Montas was originally scheduled to pitch, to be the starter on Saturday. More on him in a minute. But Montas was scheduled to pitch Saturday against the Mariners. And Carlos Mendoza, David Stearns, they intervened. They said, no. We're going to go move Montas to the bullpen, and we're going to call up one of the kids. So some people said Brandon Sproat. Some people said Mclean. Ultimately, Mclean got the nod. And what a debut Nolan Mclean had. Nolan Mclean, 5 1/3 innings, 5 1/3 scoreless innings, by the way. 8 strikeouts in his 5 1/3 innings. He did get the win. You want to go even more in depth on his stat line. He only gave up 2 hits in his 5 1/3 innings. Walks were a little high. He walked 4 batters, but he struck out 8. I was very impressed with Nolan Mclean. Nolan Mclean, fantastic outing. I was very impressed with his poise. Even when he got into trouble on the base pads, there were at times he had runners on first and second. Sometimes he had runners on second and third. There's a clip out there. I don't want to get a YouTube copyright strike, but there is a clip out there where Nolan Mclean was pitching against Seattle, one of Seattle's great players, Julio Rodriguez, all-star this year, by the way. And he made an insane, with runners on first and second, Mclean takes a ground ball, makes a crazy behind-the-back catch to initiate the double play. This kid Mclean, if I didn't know any better, I would have said that he's pitched in the majors before with the way that he looked. Velocity on the fastball was good. I was very impressed by Nolan Mclean. I was unsure, to be honest with you guys, of what to think about Mclean, only because the last time the Mets called up a top starting pitching prospect, we saw how that went with Blade Tidwell, who was just god-awful. But Nolan Mclean, just very, very impressive in his major league debut. Mclean, again, called up 5 1/3 scoreless inning in a game where the Mets only surrendered 1 run. In a game where the pitching staff, on a team where the pitching staff has been atrocious for the better part of a month and a half, it's very welcoming to see a game that the Mets not only win, but that the Mets only surrender 1 run. Of course, the 1 run being Eugenio Suarez home run off of Edwin Diaz in the top of the 9th. But do I think that Mclean can sustain this long term? Well, let's see. According to the pitching schedule, if I could pull it up, Mets have 3 in Washington. Off day today. So Mclean not factored into anything. The pitching matchups only updated for the Washington series. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But Nolan Mclean, matter of fact, I couldn't make a prediction here because, the pitchers pitch every 5 days. He's not going to see action in the Washington series because he pitched Saturday. But Nolan Mclean should go up. Oh, wow. The next test for Nolan Mclean will be against the Braves. Mets have a weekend series this weekend in Atlanta against the Braves. But again, is this sustainable? You can't judge how a career is going to go based off of 1 start. But I have absolutely liked what I see. Again, Mclean has the poise of a big leaguer. Mclean, when he was in trouble, he didn't sweat. His body language stayed the same. His energy stayed the same. Because that ball that Julio Rodriguez hit, if Mclean doesn't make that behind the back catch, that's a worm burner single up the middle. Runner's going to score. Especially with Dom Canzone on the base pads. He was at second base. Dominic Canzone, one of the speedsters in Major League Baseball. But I like what I've seen out of Mclean. Now, here's an interesting factoids about Mclean in this start. Nolan Mclean is the first Mets pitcher to have 8 strikeouts in a debut since Zach Wheeler back in 2013. Zach Wheeler, now the ace of the Phillies again. He's gone for foreseeably the rest of the season, but Zach Wheeler, a mighty decent pitcher. So that and only 2 pitchers in Mets history to do so. Even the great Tom Seaver never had 8 strikeouts in his MLB debut. So that's that. And you could tell the fan base loves Mclean because when Mclean was being taken out of the game by Carlos Mendoza, the crowd booed. They wanted Mclean to stay in there. His pitch count was 91 pitches when he was removed from the game. I have never heard a home crowd boo because their starting pitcher was getting taken out. I've heard them boo because their starting pitcher gave up 8 runs, but never because he was taken out after a great outing. But it's just great to see this kid get an opportunity at this juncture in the season, knowing that the season is potentially on the line with every game that's played the rest of the way. And he made the best of it. First MLB at bat. First batter he faced, Randy Arozarena, who's a pretty darn good ball player. Mclean struck him out. Also, Mclean, the first Mets pitcher in forever to get into the 6th inning, where usually the 5th inning and even sometimes the 4th has been kryptonite for a lot of these Mets pitchers. I'm excited to see what Nolan Mclean can do the rest of the way. The Mets, obviously, again, you can't judge it just on one game, but so far, I think they made the right choice over him over Sproat. Again, they tried the top starting pitching prospect experiment with Blade Tidwell, and it didn't go well, but the Nolan Mclean experiment seems to be going much better than the Blade Tidwell experiment. Now, of course, with Nolan Mclean's starting spot, somebody had to get bumped out of the rotation, and that was Frankie Montas. Now, Frankie Montas, who I have not been shy, about. Oh, baseball purist, before I continue. My good friend, baseball purist. Hey, Al, I never miss your show. Baseball purist, one of my favorite supporters. Thank you for tuning in. Of course, if you have any comments on Nolan Mclean or what we're about to talk about next, of course, baseball purists, chime in the comments. I'm always happy and welcome to see you. But Frankie Montas was bumped out of the rotation in favor for Nolan Mclean. Now, Frankie Montas was not productive as a starting pitcher for this Mets team. And I said it, I was a critic of Frankie Montas going all the way back to spring training when he got hurt. I saw his rehab outings in the minors. He had a 13.50 ERA rehabbing in the minor leagues. And it just was not, I didn't like what I saw in the minors. And if you can't get guys who are not major league ready out, if you can't get outs against competition that's not major league ready, then how can we expect you to be competitive in Major League Baseball? Say what you will, but Frankie Montas then was given his opportunity to pitch for this Mets club of the majors after getting a 2-year, $34 million contract with a player opt-in, by the way. Thank you, David Stearns, for that. 2 years, $34 million with a player option, not a club option, a player option after the 2 years is up. So Frankie Montas may be on this team for the next 2 seasons after this season, because the way that his lack of productivity, he may not, no team may want to pick him up. So he's going to stick to where the money is. And he was terrible as a starter. And now, unfortunately, he's become a bullpen arm. And Frankie Montas, according to the New York Post, is upset with his demotion to the bullpen. Now, hold on. This is a guy who on the season is 3-2. Grant, all right, win-loss record. He has one more win than a loss. Whoop-de-doo. But a 6.28 ERA, 32 strikeouts, and 38 and 2/3 innings pitched. And he's been a human piñata. A human piñata. Since he's been on the big league roster. And he has the audacity to say that he is not happy with going to the bullpen? Now, last I checked, he could have been Paul Blackburn and he could have been shown the door. The Mets didn't show him the door. But for Frankie Montas to come out, here and say that he is not happy with his bullpen demotion is insane to me. As a struggling player, you should want your team to do whatever's in the best interest of the team for the team to win. The Mets went from first place in the NL East before Montas came on the active roster to now 1.5 games up on the Cincinnati Reds, trying to hold them off because they fell down a cliff. With Montas on the active roster, mind you. I don't understand how it's mind-boggling to me how Frankie Montas could even feel some type of way. Frankie Montas, since being demoted to the bullpen, here's his game logs, folks. He's made 2 appearances as a reliever. One was against the Milwaukee Brewers. He pitched 3 innings, gave up 1 earned run on 3 hits. He walked 2, he struck out 3. Okay, not too bad. Then against Seattle, back on Friday, where he pitched 2 innings, gave up 1 run on 3 hits, 2 walks, and no strikeouts. Horrible lines. But you have the nerve to feel some type of way about going to the pen. Again, you're lucky because we do have the Mets do have Steve Cohen, the richest owner in all of North American sports, where if the Mets just wanted to outright release Montas, they could eat the whole $34 million and send him on his way, and he probably wouldn't pitch in Major League Baseball again unless the Rockies or the Nationals get an injury and want to fill out a roster spot. Baseball purists, couple of comments here. 2024, the Detroit Tigers mostly used the bullpen-only pitching staff, except when Skubal started. Should the Mets try a similar approach this year, using only the bullpen, except when Senga and Mclean pitch? And he says the Dodgers won the World Series with a bullpen-only pitching staff, too. All right, I'm going to go to this comment, baseball purist, because this is the most interesting scenario. Do I believe the Mets should try all bullpen approach? I say no, only for the simple fact that the bullpen has been atrocious as of late. Reed Garrett started off this season with a hot arm. We saw on Wednesday against the Braves, came in to clean up David Peterson's mess and made the mess worse. He took the Braves from within 2 runs of the Mets to being up 2 runs with a grand slam that Michael Harris II hit. Reed Garrett, I don't know what happened to the Reed Garrett of April and May, but the Reed Garrett of this summer has been god-awful. You mix that with Ryan Stanek, who's not been reliable, ERA north of 4. Even Brooks Raley had a bad outing this weekend. And then, of course, Ryan Helsley has struggled so far this season since joining the Mets. Helsley. And then you want to talk about Ryan Helsley. Ryan Helsley, prior to coming over to the Mets, his numbers with St. Louis this season were very impressive. With St. Louis, he had a record of 3-1, had an ERA of 3 even. Since he's been a Met, 0-3, meaning he's blown the lead 3 times, with an ERA of 7.11. He's blown 3 save opportunities. Granted, he's not the closer. And in St. Louis this year, he had 21 saves in 26 chances. And it's crazy because in 8 appearances with the Mets this season, he's blown the lead 3 times. ERA over 7. So I don't think a bullpen game is the answer. Gregory Soto has been okay. Tyler Rogers, another guy. Now, granted, seeing how Drew Gilbert has been playing for the Giants, I don't think it's an overpay anymore. But even Tyler Rogers, since coming over to the Mets, his ERA 1.93, but he's 0-1 in 9 games. So this bullpen, outside of Edwin Diaz, there's no guy guaranteed to get outs. And even Edwin Diaz came in the game Saturday after a couple of days rest, gives up a homer to Eugenio Suarez. I could only imagine how the Mets would have fared in that game if it was a closer game. Granted, when Diaz came in, he had a 3-0 cushion. But speaking of cushions, let's talk about this now. The Mets offense finally starting to hit and wake up. For most of the season, the Mets offense, the pitching was great early in the season while the offense was stagnant. And that's what carried the Mets to wins, was the pitching. Offense has been on fire lately. Yesterday's game in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, the Little League Classic, the Mets scored 7 runs. They win 7-3. Saturday, 3 runs. They win 3-1. Here's the thing. Friday, and this is where the Mets pitching hurts. The Mets scored 9 runs on Friday night. Now, typically 9 runs would be enough to put a visiting team away. But the Mets had a lot of heart Friday. They score 9 runs. They lose 11-9. Thursday, they lose to the Braves 4-3. Wednesday was the kicker. The Mets were up in the game 6-0 after 2 innings. And the Braves score 11 unanswered runs. They win that game 11-6. Typically, you score 6 runs in a game. That should be, especially 6 runs early. Your offense should be able to build on that and continue to pummel the other team. And you should get a win, but they didn't. And then last Tuesday, in a game where Pete Alonso breaks the home run record, the franchise home run record, Mets scored 13 runs. They win 13-5. Last Sunday in Milwaukee, Mets scored 6 runs. They were up 5-0 in that game. Brewers came back to win 7-6. So Mets offense is hitting. It's just the pitching that has been bad as of late. The Mets pitching just has to do a better job, because here's my thing, right? Yes, pitchers are going to give up runs. But when your team is scoring 6, 7, 8, even 9 runs in a game, that should be enough to get the job done. For as much criticism as this Mets offense has taken, they're finally starting to wake up. They're finally starting to wake up. This Mets offense. In this week alone, we've seen home runs from Francisco Alvarez, saw home runs from Mark Vientos last night in the Little League Classic. And it can't just be all Lindor, Soto, Alonso. By the way, Lindor, multi-home run game Friday night. He hit 2 homers in that game. But it cannot be just Lindor, Soto, Alonso. The rest of the offense has to gel. Rest of the offense has to wake up. And you just have to get more production out of the bottom of the line guys, which the lineup has started to do. We've seen timely hits this weekend from Ronnie Mauricio. Again, Alvarez had a couple of hits and a homer this week that just passed. Brandon Nimmo, a couple of good games. And they just got to keep it up. Again, we are in the dog days of the summer. The Mets are 66-58. That's 124 games. There are only 38 games the rest of the way. The Mets need to fire on all cylinders. There is a possibility that they could catch the Phillies. It's a 5-game difference. They've got to win more than they lose, obviously, and they've got to keep the Cincinnati Reds at bay. Again, the Reds play tonight at 9:30. They're going up against the Angels. The Angels, a team that's probably not going to make the postseason, have nothing to play for. They're 4 games below 500, wasting Mike Trout's potential. Well, I say Mike Trout is starting to decline with all the injuries he's had, but they've wasted Mike Trout. If Ohtani would have stayed there, they'd have wasted him too. Anthony Rendon robbed them, but this is not an Angels podcast, so I'm not going to go on. But this Mets team has to do more winning than losing a lot in the next couple of weeks. Me personally, it doesn't matter to me if they catch the Phillies or not. I just want to see October. It doesn't matter to me if we get the last wild card spot. I just want in the playoffs when the playoffs start. That's all. That's all I can hope to want to see. Francisco Lindor named the Mets player of named the MLB player of the week. We just named that breaking news as we are continuing to go on with our show here. But want to go over some injuries and transactions. On the injury report, updated today, Francisco Alvarez, the catcher, right thumb injury. He's day-to-day. He appeared to injure his thumb when he dove into second base after hitting a double in the 7th inning in yesterday's Little League Classic. He'll return to New York on the off day, which is today, to undergo an MRI. So he has not traveled with the rest of the team to Washington, D.C. If he's not going on the IL, they'll get him to D.C. I'm sure Luis Torrens would start in his place. If he goes on the IL, which I hope not, Hayden Senger most likely will get brought up to be Torrens' backup. Pitcher Christian Scott, remember him? As a sprained UCL in the right elbow, he's been on the 60-day IL, had Tommy John surgery the end of last year. He underwent a hybrid Tommy John in September of last year. He missed the entire campaign this year. He began throwing for the first time in March of this year, and now has been throwing bullpen sessions. He should be good to go by spring training 2026. Tyler McGill, who's been on the IL with a right elbow sprain since June 17th. He has a mid to late August return timetable. He began a minor league rehab assignment with 1 2/3 scoreless innings on August 12th down in Binghamton in AA club. He threw 41 pitches that outing and will continue to pitch for several weeks to build back up to a starter's workload. So those are your injury updates for this Mets club. Now we're going to look ahead to the upcoming schedule. The Mets starting a 3-game set against the Washington Nationals tomorrow. They'll play them tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday before going to Atlanta on Friday. For the first game of the series, David Peterson, who's 7-5, 3.30 ERA, had a horrid start Wednesday. First 3 innings were great, 4th inning horrible. He'll go up against Jake Irvin, who's 8-7, 5.14 ERA. Then Wednesday's game, Kodai Senga, who's 7-4, 2.35 ERA. He'll go up against Brad Lord, who's 3-6 with a 3.26 ERA. And the series finale on Thursday, Sean Manaea, 1-1 with a 4.78 ERA. He's going to go ahead and go up against Mackenzie Gore, 5-12 with a 4.04 ERA. This has got to be a series, folks, that the Mets win. The Nationals are 50-74. Safe to say that they have nothing to play for the rest of the season other than pride and stats. This Nationals team, of course, don't sleep on them. The Mets had a 7-run lead on them a few months ago in a game on a Sunday, and the Nationals ended up coming back to win that game. So, especially with the struggles the Mets bullpen has had as of late, no lead is safe. The Mets cannot take their foot off the gas pedal at all. This Washington Nationals team will sneak up on you. They will beat you. They will threaten you. They've got a lot of key players like James Wood, C.J. Abrams, veteran Josh Bell. So, Keibert Ruiz, the catcher. So, by no means will this be an easy series for the Mets, despite the discrepancies in the records. And then after that, crucial series because the Atlanta Braves, even though they have nothing to play for, they too always play the Mets tough, and they proved that this past week at Citi Field when they won the series. They beat us 2-1, and now we're in their house going into the weekend. The Braves historically always playing the Mets tough, even without Ronald Acuna Jr., who is back on the injured list. Marcell Ozuna, Michael Harris, Matt Olson, Sean Murphy, all can do damage. So, and that's without Austin Riley or Ronald Acuna Jr. in the lineup. But once again, I thank everybody for watching, whether you're watching on Twitch, Facebook Live, or YouTube Live. Again, I'll bring you content all throughout the week here on this channel. And again, if you like this podcast and you're not subscribed already, go down below, hit the subscribe button, give me a like. Also, other Mets fans or other people that like baseball, please make sure to share this podcast. Baseball Purist, I appreciate you, sir. He says, Al, you're the man. Baseball Purist, you're one of my favorite people. That when I see you pop in this room, it makes me feel good to know that what I'm doing is getting to an audience. So thank you, sir. I always appreciate you. And again, if you know people who like baseball, share this podcast. People who are Mets fans, share this podcast. People who like sports podcasts, share this podcast. I'm going to be back in a couple of days, more than likely this weekend, to bring you more live Mets news and coverage. And again, I've said all that there is to say. Hopefully we could keep the Cincinnati Reds at bay, and hopefully they lose tonight. Let's go Angels. I'm not an Angels fan, but tonight I will be. But I've said all there is to say, and the only thing left to say is, let's go Mets.